Okay, so we can officially start the event. Welcome everyone to the Undergraduate Research Education Series. Welcome back if you have ever attended one of these sessions before. We've got people attending in lots of different formats today, and so I'm going to do our land acknowledgement as always, and then some housekeeping about signing in and what counts and how you can make sure you get all your boxes checked out. Okay, so to start us off, the American Indian Resource Center leads the way for me to acknowledge that the land that the University of Utah resides on has always been on Indigenous lands, specifically on the lands of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshu, and Ute tribes. And I encourage you all to think about the Indigenous peoples of whatever land you're on today if you're not also currently in Salt Lake City as well. It's imperative that we acknowledge the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Through this land acknowledgement, I want to express my personal gratitude and appreciation for their perseverance to protect this land for future generations. The erasure of this relationship between Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands is an insidious form of ongoing colonization, and we need to build our mindfulness of this and of other Indigenous protocols. And in my opinion, first step to respecting Indigenous peoples would be to get the land back. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and just say there are multiple ways of attending this event. So if you are with us in real time on Zoom right now, your login to Zoom counts as your attendance. You don't have to do anything more. I will drop a link to the evaluation form in the chat. That's optional. That's always helpful for us to get feedback from you all, but you've done what you need to. The people in the room physically with us right now, you've also already signed in, so your attendance is taken care of. And then for anyone who's watching the video for your attendance later, please go to the top of the Education Series page and fill out that Undergraduate Research Education Series evaluation form with your unit. That's the only way that I can know that you attended, and then you can get credit for that. And then also for those in the room, if you want. Okay, with no further ado, we're going to learn about writing abstracts with a wonderful presenter. She's presented like 8 million times for us already. I have no idea, but it's always really, really good. You're going to learn so much about writing abstracts. Take it away, Nkenna.
Hi, everyone. Let's see here. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. Let's see. There you go. And then thank you. Beautiful. I think it's thinking about it. There we go. Beautiful. Awesome. Can everyone in Zoom land see that? Just give me. Oh, can you? Switch swap displays. Let's see. Do you know what's going on? We're getting tech support here.
This one. But now you don't know how to flip screens as to which one is showing.
Okay. I can do it without the notes.
If you
And the chat, but you can use advanced to share the presentation portion of the screen online and have your hands visible to you.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm going to do this for like 5 minutes. I don't do PowerPoint. I'm so sorry. I do systems. I don't have a good answer for this. If you could, wait, is that swap displays?
Yeah.
Thank you. Driver, what do you see?
No.
I'm messing with your stuff. Desktop number 2.
That looks right. Yeah. No.
Okay,
Kid. I'm
awesome.
hiding.
Good, thanks so
Way.
much. Okay. All right, I think we've got it all down now. All right, so thank you all for being here. Thank you for dealing with all the technical issues. It happens sometimes. And thank you too for being here live in person. So we have 2 people who are in the classroom right now. So I'll try to cater to different parties during our time together. But my name is, as you probably saw in my notes, Nkenna Onwuzuruoha. I'm a PhD student in writing and rhetoric studies here at the U, and I've taught different writing courses. And I've also, like Shiver said, taught or facilitated the abstract writing workshop. Yeah, and I'm really happy to be here today. And I know that you all are at different stages of research. So some of you might have already started writing the abstracts. Some of you might have submitted abstracts to different conferences or symposiums or journals, or had it reviewed by a chair or a professor. And some of you might just be coming here with like a fresh new set of eyes and haven't really written an abstract before. So I really think that we can all help each other out here and just add in information when we know it and ask questions when we're a little confused about things. So we'll see how the kind of lively discussion happens in the classroom and on Zoom. And Shiver's here as well to read off the chat. So it's going to be kind of a tag team situation here where they're going to look at the chats and I'm going to like listen to what they're saying and answer your questions. All right, before we move into writing abstracts, I just want to talk a little bit about writing rhetoric studies. So it is a program here at the U. You can get an undergraduate and even a doctorate or master's in it as well. And rhetoric really refers to the way that people use language, whether it's visual or written or spoken, to communicate ideas and to also organize groups into like ways that they maintain power and structure within their communities. And also a lot of people outside of other disciplines refer to and cite scholarship within writing rhetoric studies and use it for the advancement of like professional careers as well. So you might see people who get degrees in writing rhetoric studies and end up being a lawyer or going to law school, for example. So definitely if you're looking into taking upper division writing courses, or learning more about, the way that you use language, or you'd like to see, language being used within different spaces that you're in, consider, exploring a writing and rhetoric studies course. So that's my spiel about writing rhetoric study. So let's talk about what an abstract is, right? An abstract, if you're not certain already, it's just a summary of your research paper, right? So a summary is going to be fairly short and it's going to be very condensed. And it's going to talk about not only the content, but the structure. So it talks about the content of your paper and also talks about the structure, the way that you've organized your arguments in your paper. So what is the function of an abstract? An abstract, for one, helps readers decide whether to read an entire paper. And you might have been in this situation, most likely you have been in the situation where if you think back to your writing 1010 or 2010, or even a writing intensive course that you've taken within your field, having to do research and doing maybe exploratory research where you're finding sources to incorporate into your paper, and you don't have time to read a 30-page research paper. So you're just looking at the abstract, which is probably about a paragraph long, and you're vetting these sources to decide whether or not the paper is worth reading and annotating and also synthesizing into your research paper. Okay. So you've definitely been on the reader's end of that. And people might be doing the same thing. So reviewers might look at your abstract before they take a big dive into your paper. And they're looking to make sure that what you're presenting is aligning with what their conference is about or the symposium is about, or what maybe they even asked you to write about if you're taking a course. And this is one way that reviewers for conferences and journals and these other things decide whether or not to accept your proposal by just taking a quick look at what you're putting in your abstract. So it's pretty high stakes for such, few words that you're presenting there. So that makes abstracts pretty difficult. And there are so many books about abstracts because it's so difficult to really condense your research, something that you might have been spending months or years, or if it's just for a course a couple of weeks doing, can be still very difficult to condense into an idea that is very palatable and something that's very understandable to someone who's just looking at your paper, your research or ideas for the first time. So Swells and Feek say, constructing an efficient, clear abstract is a fairly difficult task, even for experienced and widely published readers. Right? So this means that you might find that writing a paragraph involves a lot of collaboration here. So you might want to go to people who've written abstracts before to get some feedback. And then also, we're going to learn more about like the structure of abstracts. So you might consider, is this kind of standard structure that you would see in abstracts? Similar to what I'm trying to achieve with my abstract. All right, so that's my kind of little presentation about abstracts. And right now I want you all to think about analyzing abstracts and actually analyze abstracts, not just think about it. So you all should have a packet, whether it's in the Zoom chat or an email or right in front of you, like these two folks have. And what I want you to do is just take a look at any of the abstracts except for the very last one. We'll go through that together a little later. And I want you to look at the abstract sentence by sentence. So this is a really kind of like deep methodical analysis here. And I want you to think about what is each sentence doing? So what's its function? What's it's supposed to tell readers? And then once you're done looking at more than one abstract, maybe two or three, you might see some patterns emerging. So what are these patterns? Thanks. So function and patterns. It's 12:18 right now, so I'll give you about 10 minutes to read as many abstracts as you can, minus the last one. And let's see if we can find some functions and patterns. And if you have any questions right now, definitely feel free to put them in the chat box. and take about 5 more minutes to review as many abstracts as you can. Oh yeah, and if you find a particularly powerful sentence or two and you're wondering what it's doing in the abstract, what's its function, then we can talk about that as well. So different options and ways to participate. Cool. Awesome. Okay, I think we can come back a minute early. So let's talk about the first question. What did you see some of the sentences in abstracts doing? What was their function? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's really interesting too, because you have to think about who your audience is. You don't want to spend too much time having to explain jargon terms, but at the same time, you want to make sure that your readers understand the concepts that you're explaining, have a good kind of like understanding of what you're going to be going through. Oh, okay, yeah. So tell me one more time what you said.
Basically, like a lot of sentences tended to like explain the key terms.
Okay.
Or like give some context for the research, whereas some abstracts actually didn't do that.
Okay.
I was going, oh, I don't know what that means.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
not in the field.
Okay, yeah, so one participant said that a lot of the abstracts were able to provide some kind of understanding of context and also explain certain terms. And then there were some abstracts that did not do that. And it was very clear that these terms were specific to a certain like discipline or field that would, be kind of difficult to understand without any kind of explanation from someone who is outside of that field.
We also have a
Oh, okay. Peyton. Go ahead, Peyton. You can unmute yourself
Hi.
if you want. Yeah, hey.
So I just wanted to say, like, there was kind of a general structure to every abstract that kind of like introduced the first sentence was like the purpose. And then
Okay.
some of them would talk about previous research and then kind of what they're going to do in their own research and then the methods that they used. Then they just all kind of concluded with 2 sentences of like their findings or like the significance of what they were researching.
Yeah, you've mentioned a lot of things that we're going to talk about in just a minute now. But yeah, a lot of them do have some type of contextual information or background. A lot of them will talk about why they're doing this research, so their purpose. You will find, some type of like findings and like a discussion about findings in an abstract. So those are definitely key elements to a strong, solid abstract right there. Okay, any other questions, insights, patterns that people saw?
There were several
Okay,
comments in the chat.
okay,
So
okay.
Okay, so we've got pattern in the paragraph among each, introducing the topic and giving a bit of background, a brief overview of how the research is being conducted, then the why of it. Why is it important?
Okay.
Many sentences provided an introduction to the problem, defining their terms, and the last sentence is either about the findings or what they wanted to find.
Okay.
And then another person noted, some of the same things: purpose, point of the research, background on previous research, and context.
Yeah, and I think I guess this is one thing I didn't address the previous research. You might want to talk about previous research that's been done so that people know that you're a part of a certain disciplinary community, right? So you're not just kind of doing research in isolation, but you're drawing upon the research, the findings and discussions that have happened previous to the research that you're presenting, whether it's in a journal or a conference. Cool. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so voila, this is a lot of what you've already said. I think everything you've already said and noticed when you were analyzing the abstracts. But the very first thing you want to do is create some type of background or context. So give people a little bit of information about what your research is about. And again, this is one of the trickier parts of the abstract because you have to think about who your audience is and how much they will know about your research. So do you explain certain concepts or terms, or do you hope that they will continue reading your paper and understand better the concepts and terms or theories that you're introducing in your background? So a lot of kind of rhetorical decisions right here coming up in the background section. Then you're talking about your purpose. So why are you doing this research? And by the time you're writing your abstract, you probably have a good idea of purpose, and that might be one of the easier parts of the abstract to create. Another one that can be very tricky, just methods in general can be very difficult to kind of prove and validate in your research, and trying to condense that to a sentence or two can be quite difficult as well. But this is your opportunity to talk about what steps you took and why to achieve this certain type of like purpose that you set out to achieve. And then you have your results. So based off of the methods that you used, what did you find? You take some time to introduce that. And then lastly, you will conclude. So very similar to like a lot of the research papers that you probably write, especially if you're in the hard or soft, natural sciences, you'll see a lot of this, or social sciences as well. It might be a little different from what you're used to doing if you're more humanities based, but you can still see a lot of that kind of overlap a lot of times. So, any questions about this structure? Anything that you think is missing, or any section you don't understand? Cool. Pretty straightforward. Okay. All right, and okay, got like. So now I just want us to take another about, let's say 5 minutes, because I think you did pretty well with 10, and you could probably do this in 5, just to continue working off of like seeing if this is like the right type of structure for us, or a solid type of structure to think about using in other abstracts that you're creating. Let's take a look at more abstracts. So choose maybe 2 more abstracts, or revisit an abstract that you already looked at, and do some reverse engineering here. And now knowing that most of these abstracts will have all of these things, at least arguably, you can make an argument that they have all of these things. See if you can kind of highlight, or write a little note about, okay, this section is the results, or this section is the methods for at least 2 of the abstracts you have. Let's see. So for those who might be going off for a bathroom break, we'll reconvene at 12:40. Okay, so were there any kind of interesting or intriguing things that you saw as you were kind of reviewing abstracts for the first or second time, looking at this kind of series of sections for good abstract writing? Did you see some things missing or see things that were particularly done well? Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed that it was definitely not like not all of these sections.
Okay. 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 Let's take a look at that one real quick. Yeah, yeah. So one participant said that certain abstracts only pertained a few of the 5 sections. And in particular, the Tony Hawk Learning Project only seemed to have about 3 of them in there. So I thought we could just kind of take a quick look at the Tony Hawk one on, I think, page 2. It's the, I think, 4th abstract. And yeah, there are probably some that do not have all of the sections, but let's take a look. So the first sentence is, the study is to show how even a sport video game can incorporate many types of learning. So that sounds like purpose, right?
Yeah.
And so this might be, example of, well, maybe you want to talk about some background. Maybe you want to put in like a fact that you can find just even outside of your discipline, like X amount of people tend to play video games. And people are concerned about sports video games for some reason. Let's see. Okay, to call attention to what might be overlooked as significant forms of learning and to understand and take advantage of the opportunities video games afford as more deliberate learning environments. Okay, so that seems very purposeful. It's a pretty long purposeful sentence there. And it's almost half of the abstract as well. So it seems like this person really wanted folks to understand their purpose more than anything. The aspects explored are the skills and techniques required to be successful in the game, the environment that's skaters skate in, the personal versus group identity that is shown through the general appearance of the skater, and the values and icons that the game teaches players. Okay, so these are aspects explored. Yeah. I think you can make an argument that at least they're breaking down the different type of criteria they're looking at. Yeah, it's very close to what I would say would be like a method section. Even though that could be just a tad stronger there, maybe talk about a certain type of theory or method that you're going to use to do all of these things. But that's one of the good things about abstracts, that you can have a working abstract as well. Get some feedback from other folks in and outside of your discipline to make your abstract stronger. And then very last sentence. So this is I think 3-sentence abstract right here. We are finding that sport video games support learning. We hope to find how one learns about oneself as a learner from playing. Okay, so sounds like findings there. And maybe a little bit of intermingling with discussion and conclusion too, because they hope to find out what learner or video players learn about themselves as they play. All right. So yeah, so we can see some of these as working abstracts here. Any other kind of insights or things that you noticed? Okay, thanks so much. And thanks for pointing that out. I like when we can kind of be critical, but also just give feedback. I think critical doesn't have to mean tearing something apart, but just kind of noticing where things could be moved farther along in a stage of writing. All right, so last one, just take about a minute to read the very last abstract. And we're just going to just confirm that what we see here on this slide matches, what we consider as being a part of these sections.
someone in the chat
Okay.
asked, so how does the structure differ between behavioral research and laboratory research?
Cool. All right, so someone in the chat asked, so how does the structure differ between behavioral research and laboratory research? And I would say that you may not find too much of a difference because behavioral research does involve like methodology. I'm not sure if there's a certain section that you feel that behavioral science might not have versus laboratory science. But you might find that they have a very similar structure. But also, I always encourage people to look at templates. So if you're in behavioral science, for example, then you might want to take a look at different ways that people have written abstracts before, and particularly look at the way that they use methodology, whether it's, for example, ethnography, studying people and cultures, rather than maybe, see, I'm not in laboratory sciences, but using the test tubes or whatever, whatever you do in the hard sciences. But that's just me assuming that maybe you're talking about methods and maybe you're talking about another section instead. All right. So let's look at the final abstract. And the first section we have is background. And let's see. So children undergoing long-term hospital care face problems of isolation from their familiar home and school environments. This isolation has an impact on the emotional well-being of the child. So this is what I've kind of like categorized as being the background. So you're just providing a fact. And again, this fact could possibly be outside of the discipline and some type of like very general book that you might pick up at Barnes and Nobles about children who have to be hospitalized for a long time. Right. So nothing that's too very kind of convoluted or super like esoteric that would be like in your field. It's very understandable to a general audience. Okay. So next part, this paper will report on research that explores the design of technologies that mitigate some of the negative aspects of separation while respecting the sensitivities of the hospital, school, and home contexts. So now we're looking at purpose here, like what specifically is your research doing here or your project doing here? All right, so next thing, we conducted design workshops with parents, teachers, and hospital staff. Okay, so now we're understanding a little bit more about the method here. You're conducting design workshops. So these workshops might be, I guess, kind of like the workshop here where you're facilitating different types of conversations or, helping or assisting in knowledge making somehow for different parties involved in the hospitalization care of a child. Okay, and then there was a strong desire for a mediated connection, but also a significant need to protect privacy and avoid disruption. So based off of the workshops that you facilitated, you found these things were occurring or ideas were present. Okay, and then we see this kind of intermingling of the methods and the results and finding here because we go back to the methods. And maybe, again, this is to make it kind of flow a little better. So in response, we designed a novel technology that combined an ambient presence with photo sharing to connect hospitalized children with schools and families. Okay, so you might even say that there are two methods here. So we do one method and you come up with this type of result and you decide, well, this isn't where the study ends. We can possibly like mitigate or fix the results that we see by introducing this new technology. So now you have method two. You have like kind of another experiment kind of snuck into the larger experiment here. So, and what are the results of that smaller experiment? So this paper reports on the field trial of the technology. Okay. So there are results there. That. And almost you might even argue kind of a purpose too. So now we understand that talking about the technology is going to be a major part of the paper. And finally, we have the end. The research provides new insights into how technology can support connectedness and provide a foundation for contributing to the well-being of children and young people in sensitive settings. Okay, So we know like what is the larger contribution of this research to everyday society. All right. So any questions or thoughts about the breakdown of that abstract? And I know a lot of people do ask about like how long should an abstract be? And I would say that a lot of times you will find that answer in the project description, especially if you're applying to, let's say, a conference. They'll say your abstract needs to be 150 words, or they might even use characters. I did that recently where I applied to a conference and they asked about characters and I had to do some Googling, like how many characters are typically in 150 words? And also you might find that they're a bit longer for other, things that you're applying to, especially if it's going to be a large volume of people who are applying and they want to have a good idea of what the abstract is about or the paper is about by looking through the abstract. But generally I've seen abstracts, and again, I'm in the humanities, be around 150 to maybe upwards to 300, 350 words.
One of the pre-submitted questions.
Okay. Okay.
How would you advise putting down words or information to meet that word count?
Okay, so Shiver asked, how would you advise, cutting down your abstract to meet certain word count limitations? You know what, it might really involve thinking about who your audience is and also what you're applying to. So if it's for, let's say, an opportunity to get funded to do research, like I guess an NSA grant, for example, you may want to focus more on your methods and results, especially if you have them already, because then it shows, oh, okay, this is really promising research here. Like this person isn't at stage 1, they're closer to stage 3. But if you're applying to, let's say, a symposium where there's going to be people from different fields of study and they want to understand what your research is about generally, like you're just giving the, I don't know, 30 to 60-second elevator spiel, then you might want to focus more on background and purpose so that your audience is more educated than they were, before they entered the conversation or looked at your poster presentation. So you really do find, especially, in my discipline, writing rhetoric studies, it's less about telling people how to write and telling them how to think about different approaches and strategies to writing. Any other questions? That was a really awesome question. Oh, all right, so let's look at other tips then. Okay, so use models. That's definitely one thing to take home with you, is that you will find there are different templates and different examples of ways to write abstracts within your field. And you could go to someone who's been writing abstracts for, again, conferences and journals for quite some time, like your professor or chair or PI, whoever is kind of supervising the research that you're doing. Even if the person's not in this field, maybe someone from Europe, and ask for models or ways that you can find models online or at the library. Okay. And yeah, you might want to look at models that are, for a specific discipline, like let's say biological sciences or molecular biology, something like that. And you might also want to look at abstracts that are specific to a conference or journal or a grant. I know a lot of people, within the sciences, whether it's hard or soft sciences, apply to NSA grants, and you probably have a plethora of different abstracts that you can kind of review to see how, those have been written successfully. Make it self-contained. So this can be very difficult when you're writing about something that is very kind of like niche, to make sure that people don't have to go outside of your abstract to Google different words. So it is a kind of a trial and error conversation with different people, decide whether you use some word that's very specific to your field, or if you just take the word count, limit to explain a certain term instead of just kind of leaving it blankly out there. But you want to, at the end of the day, make sure that your reader, especially if they're vetting your abstract and your paper or whatever you're turning in, doesn't have to Google search or tap the shoulder of someone next to them and say, what does this mean? And you'll see that really outlined in a lot of grants and other things that you're applying for that people will say, please don't use jargon terms. Like make sure that this is understandable to a wide audience. Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I am in a physics sort of department, and so a lot of papers that I read and probably will have to write in the future are going to be reliant on math. And I'm just wondering if you have any like advice on how to navigate like how deep into the math I guess I should go. You know, I don't want to go too deep and just throw out a bunch of numbers, but it may be necessary sometimes. So yeah, any advice would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I'm not in physics. I tried to avoid taking physics as long as I could, to be honest. So I'm not honestly sure what an abstract in physics looks like. And again, if it's based off of characters and you're wondering about how do I keep it really concise and self-contained, then maybe you might find that you talk about, we're using this theory or theorem or whatever, you physicists use. And then you go into more detail in the method section of your paper. But that's, just my very kind of general secular understanding of what happens specifically in your field. So I would, again, go back to the first bullet point of like talking to people who are in your discipline and also looking at abstracts within physics to see, are people actually using numbers or are they just explaining the theories or theorems that they're using later on in the paper? Is, would your audience, especially if they're part of some type of physics academic community, understand the theorem and you don't have to refer to it, or you can just clearly just refer to it rather than using the numbers in your abstract.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh. Yeah, make it self-contained and keep it concise. Again, I think Katie really brought up a good question there, and you'll have to kind of play around with how do you keep it concise, especially if you do need to explain numbers or theories or concepts that might be a little hard for people to understand outside your field or even within your field because of the research that you're doing. And be accurate. So make sure that the information that you have is, true and based off of research that either you've done or other people have done. And get feedback. That's so important to the writing, process, is to work in collaboration with people, not that they kind of end up having their name right next to yours when the abstract or paper is done, but that you get some advice from people who have been writing within your field and have been writing to specific like things that you are submitting to like conferences or journals or grants. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask people in and outside of your field to give you like another pair of eyes to look over your work. And they might find smaller things that you might have missed, like a typo, or bigger ideas that they think that your audience needs to know. Oh. All right, and I think that's all we really have time for. But here's my contact information. I'm here for a little while longer. And it's been great having you all tune in to the workshop and also having you two here in the audience. And if you have any questions, then feel free to reach out or reach out to Shiver. But yeah, I'll let you get on with your day. I'll turn it over to Shiver before you head out, if that's okay.
Thank you. Okay, just a reminder about the kind of housekeeping stuff. If you logged into the video or into the Zoom call in real time, your login to that counts as your attendance. You don't need to do anything else. And if you're watching this video later for your attendance, please go to the top of the education series page and fill out the undergraduate research education series evaluation with your unit. That's the only way that I can know that you watched this video and check that off for you. Thank you all so much for being here. And let's just see if we have any more questions. No. Okay, I will end.
Thank you very much to both of you.
Okay.